The weakest species in the galaxy. The Galactic Federation had seen many species rise and fall. They had witnessed empires grow, wars rage, and alliances crumble. But when they discovered Earth, they saw no threat. Humans were weak, fragile, slow, and lacking natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venom, just soft flesh and weak bones. When humanity was invited to join the Galactic Federation, many alien species protested. Why let them in? A Selvan general scoffed. They are primitive. They have no natural defenses, no advanced technology. They will never survive in real battle. Others agreed. The Varkari, a species known for their brute strength, laughed. The Sindari, masters of strategy, dismissed humans as unpredictable. Even the Avaran, the fastest species in the galaxy, found humans slow and clumsy. Despite the doubts, humans were allowed to send a small group to the elite intergalactic combat training camp, a place where warriors from different species trained for battle. If humans wanted to prove their worth, this was their chance. First day at the training camp. When the human recruits arrived, the alien trainees watched them with curiosity. The humans looked unimpressive, smaller than most, weaker than many, and visibly struggling with the high gravity of the planet. A Varkari recruit smirked. "Are you sure you're in the right place, humans? This isn't a research camp. This is for warriors." The human leader, Captain Ryan Carter, simply smiled. "We'll manage." The first training session began. It was a simple test. Run 2 miles under heavy gravity. For most alien species, it was a warm-up. But for humans, it was brutal. As the race started, humans fell behind immediately. They gasped for air. Their legs felt like lead. The alien recruits laughed as they sped ahead. A Sindari officer shook his head. "I knew it. They won't last a week." But something strange happened. Though humans started slow, they never stopped. One by one, aliens finished the course and moved to the rest area, relaxing. But they noticed something odd. Every single human was still running. They were exhausted, their bodies struggling, but they refused to quit. The last human finally crossed the finish line. The aliens, watching in disbelief, saw something they had never expected. Humans had no limits. They could push themselves beyond pain, beyond exhaustion. The Varkari recruit frowned. "They're slow, but stubborn." The Sindari officer whispered, "They don't stop. Even when their bodies fail, they keep going." The combat drills. The second test was hand-to-hand combat. Each species would fight one-on-one. The goal was simple: knock down your opponent. The first human, a young soldier named Olivia, faced a Selvan, a towering alien with 4 arms and razor-sharp claws. The fight was over in seconds. The Selvan grabbed Olivia, threw her to the ground, and grinned. The aliens cheered. The next human stepped in, a Marine named Jake. He faced a Varkari, a species built like a moving wall. The fight lasted only 10 seconds. The Varkari landed a single punch, sending Jake flying. More laughter. But then, something changed. On the second round, the humans fought differently. Instead of attacking head-on, they used strategy. Olivia dodged the Selvan's attacks and countered with precise strikes to weak points. Jake didn't fight the Varkari with strength. He fought with speed, moving just out of reach, tiring his opponent out. The aliens watched in silence. By the end of the day, the humans had lost more battles than they had won. But the aliens noticed something terrifying. Humans adapted. Every fight, they got better. Every loss, they learned. The Sindari officer muttered, "They don't fight with strength. They fight with their minds." The Avaran commander nodded. "They are weak, but they are dangerous." The first signs of fear. That night, as the aliens rested, the humans were still awake. Some were studying their alien opponents, watching combat recordings. Others were training in silence, pushing their bodies beyond exhaustion. A Selvan recruit watched in confusion. Why are they still training? The tests are over for today. The Valkyrie general answered, his voice uneasy. Because for them, it's never over. For the first time, the aliens felt something strange, doubt. Had they underestimated humanity? The first test, and the first surprise. The second morning at the intergalactic combat training camp dawned cold and quiet, but the air buzzed with anticipation. The alien recruits gathered in the central arena, a massive circle carved into the planet's rocky surface. Today wasn't just about endurance or strength. This was about combat. And everyone knew the humans were about to be humiliated. Whispers floated through the crowd. They couldn't even handle the gravity yesterday. They barely survived the run. How will they survive a fight? But while the aliens smirked and joked, the humans stood silently at the edge of the arena. Their faces were calm. Too calm. Captain Ryan Carter's eyes scanned the field, not with fear, but with focus. It wasn't the look of someone expecting defeat. It was the look of someone planning something. The first fight. A lesson in humility. The first match was announced. Human versus Valkyrie. Jake, the same Marine who had been flattened in yesterday's run, stepped forward. Across from him stood Grueling, a Valkyrie recruit twice his size, his body covered in thick, armor-like skin. Grueling grinned, baring sharp teeth. "Try not to break too easily, human," he sneered. The signal sounded. Grueling charged. It should have been over in seconds, but Jake didn't meet him head-on. Instead, he sidestepped, quick and smooth, letting the massive alien rush past. The crowd went silent. Grueling roared and swung again, but Jake ducked, rolled to the side, and tapped Grueling's leg, not with a powerful punch, but with precise pressure on the knee joint. The Valkyrie stumbled. For the first time, there was confusion in his eyes. Jake didn't stop. He moved fast, staying out of reach, striking weak points behind the knee, under the ribs, at the neck. The Valkyrie swung wildly, his strength useless against Jake's speed and precision. Finally, with one last move, Jake used Grueling's momentum against him, flipping the larger alien over his shoulder. The arena shook as Grueling hit the ground, stunned and unable to rise. Silence, then whispers. How? Did he just? The referee declared Jake the winner. The shock spreads. The aliens didn't understand what they had just seen. The Valkyrie were unbeatable in hand-to-hand combat. No species had ever bested them without brute force. But the humans had done it differently. They had used something else. A Sindari officer, known for his tactical mind, narrowed his eyes. That wasn't strength, he muttered. That was strategy. The next few fights followed. Some humans lost, but others won in unexpected ways. Olivia, the young soldier from Earth, faced Selvin with 4 arms and razor-sharp claws. Instead of trying to match power, she used her opponent's size against him, weaving around his strikes and targeting pressure points. She didn't overpower him. She outsmarted him. By midday, the laughter had stopped. The aliens weren't joking anymore. The aliens start to worry. After the matches, the recruits gathered in the mess hall. The atmosphere had shifted. Aliens who once mocked the humans now watched them carefully, whispering among themselves. A Sindari commander leaned over to Selvin General. "They're learning," he said quietly. "Every fight, they get better. They're adapting faster than any species I've seen." Selvin frowned. "But they're weak, fragile. They can't keep this up." The commander shook his head. "It's not their bodies I'm worried about. It's their minds." Meanwhile, the humans sat together, reviewing footage of the day's fights. They weren't celebrating their wins. They weren't satisfied. They were analyzing, adjusting, preparing. Captain Ryan Carter looked at his team. "They think today was surprising," he said with a small smile. "Wait until tomorrow." The first signs of fear. That night, the camp was unusually quiet. The alien recruits couldn't sleep. They had faced strong opponents before. They had faced fast ones, intelligent ones, but humans were something different. They were unpredictable. They were relentless. And worst of all, they were just getting started. The secret weapon, human mindset. The training camp never slept, but tonight felt different. The alien recruits tossed and turned in their bunks, haunted by a new, unsettling thought. Humans weren't just surviving. They were winning. It wasn't supposed to be this way. The Selvins, Valkyrie, and Sindari had all come to the intergalactic combat training camp expecting to dominate. They had natural weapons, claws, fangs, superior strength, and advanced reflexes. Humans had none of that. They were smaller, weaker, and slower, but somehow they were still standing. And that's what scared everyone the most. Whispers in the dark. In one of the dimly lit corridors of the barracks, a group of alien recruits gathered in hushed conversation. They shouldn't be this good. Grueling, the Valkyrie who had been thrown by Jake, grumbled. His pride was still bruised. A Sindari officer leaned against the wall, arms crossed. It's not just physical. They're different. They think differently. They're unpredictable. And Avarin added, 1 minute, they look like they're losing, and the next, they flip you on your back. The Sindari officer's eyes narrowed. It's not just their tactics. It's their mindset. The human edge. The next day's drills weren't about physical strength or fighting skills. This time, it was about survival under pressure. Simulated combat scenarios were designed to break the trainees mentally, to see who would crack under fear, confusion, and chaos. For most species, it was a nightmare. The first simulation dropped recruits into a battlefield filled with explosions, unpredictable traps, and enemy ambushes. The Selvins charged head-on, relying on brute force, but were quickly overwhelmed by the traps. The Sindari tried to outthink the scenario, but froze when plans fell apart. The Avarins, fast and agile, darted through the chaos but panicked when their speed couldn't save them from every danger. But the humans, they thrived. When the explosions started, they didn't freeze. When plans collapsed, they adapted. When things went wrong, and they always did, the humans didn't panic. They kept moving. Captain Ryan Carter's team worked like a machine. They communicated with short, precise commands, covering each other's backs. When one human was injured, they didn't abandon him. They carried him through the chaos. The instructors watched from the observation deck, silent. This wasn't normal. Look at them, one Sindari instructor whispered. They're calm. Too calm. The Selvin general growled. They're used to this. It's like they've seen worse. And they had. The weight of human history. After the simulation, the recruits gathered for debriefing. Most were exhausted, their minds still reeling from the stress. But the humans sat quietly, their expressions unreadable. Finally, one of the alien recruits couldn't hold back. How? A Sindari recruit asked, turning to Captain Carter. How do you stay so calm? Why aren't you afraid? Carter looked at him for a moment, then spoke softly. Because fear is part of being human, he said, but we don't let it control us. The room fell silent. We've faced fear for thousands of years, Olivia added. Wars, disasters, survival against impossible odds. Fear doesn't break us, it shapes us. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard whispers about human history. Wars that lasted for generations, battles fought with brutal efficiency, and a resilience that bordered on madness. But hearing it firsthand made it real. You think we're weak because we don't have claws or scales, Jake said quietly. But our real weapon isn't physical. It's up here. He tapped his temple. It's our mind. Our will. The cracks begin to show. The next few days of training only deepened the divide. While other species relied on natural abilities, the humans continued to adapt and improve. They studied every failure, turning mistakes into lessons. And the more the aliens watched, the more they realized the terrifying truth. Humans weren't just learning how to fight. They were learning how to win. Even worse, they were doing it faster than anyone had ever seen. By the end of the week, the alien recruits didn't see the humans as weak anymore. They saw them as something far more dangerous, unpredictable, relentless, and unstoppable. The real threat emerges. The skies over the intergalactic combat training camp were always clear, a perfect canvas of stars and distant galaxies. But today, something was different. The sky rippled, a shimmer in the atmosphere that shouldn't have been there. At first, no one noticed. The alien recruits were busy with their usual drills, sparring under the watchful eyes of their instructors. Humans were running tactical exercises, moving in tight formations, their discipline unnerving to the other species. But then the alarms blared. A deep pulsing siren echoed across the camp, one that no one had ever heard before. It wasn't the usual drill warning. This was something else. Something real. Not a drill. The recruits froze. Even the most experienced alien warriors glanced around, confused. The instructors barked orders, their usual calm replaced by urgency. All trainees to defensive positions. This is not a drill. That's when the sky tore open. A massive, jagged rift appeared above the camp, and from it, dark shapes spilled out, sleek, angular ships unlike anything the Galactic Federation had ever seen. The invaders descended fast, their weapons glowing with an eerie green light. The ground shook as explosions erupted across the training fields. Buildings crumbled. The perimeter defenses, supposed to be impenetrable, fell within minutes. Panic spread like wildfire. The alien recruits scrambled, their training forgotten. The Valkyrie charged blindly, their brute strength useless against aerial bombardments. The Sindari tried to organize a defense, but their careful strategies collapsed under the sheer chaos. The Avarans sprinted in all directions, their speed no match for the invaders' precision. It was chaos, but not for the humans. The calm in the chaos. While the other species fell apart, the humans moved like they had been waiting for this moment. Captain Ryan Carter's voice cut through the noise, sharp and clear. Squad Alpha, secure the South Ridge. Squad Beta, cover the retreat paths. Move. The humans snapped into action. They didn't panic. They didn't hesitate. They adapted. Olivia led her team through the crumbling barracks, using devised for cover. Jake coordinated with Sindari officers, trying to regroup the scattered alien forces. While others fled, the humans advanced, pushing toward the heart of the attack. The alien recruits watched in disbelief. The species they had mocked, the ones they thought were weak, were now the only ones holding the line. First contact with the enemy. As the dust settled for a brief moment, Captain Carter and his team finally saw their enemy up close. They weren't like any known species. Tall, with sleek, metallic exoskeletons and glowing red eyes, they moved with mechanical precision. Their weapons weren't just advanced. They were devastating, cutting through armor like paper. But the humans didn't flinch. Carter gave the signal, and his squad opened fire. Not wild, panicked shots like the other recruits, but controlled, precise bursts. They aimed for weak points, targeting joints and exposed circuits. Within minutes, the first wave of invaders fell. But more were coming. The turning point. As the battle raged, an alien instructor, bleeding and pinned behind cover, watched the humans with wide eyes. They're leading us, he whispered, disbelief in his voice. A Sindari officer crouched beside him, nodding slowly. They're doing more than that. They're saving us. The humans weren't just fighting for themselves. They were organizing the entire camp's defense. They coordinated attacks, set up traps, and turned the tide. Under Carter's command, species that had never cooperated before fought side by side, following the humans' lead. And for the first time, the invaders began to falter. Victory in the unlikely. Hours later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the last of the invader ships retreated into the sky, disappearing through the rift they had come from. The camp was in ruins, but it was still standing. And it was because of the humans. The surviving alien recruits gathered in the shattered arena, their faces marked with exhaustion and something new: respect. Captain Carter stood at the center, his uniform torn, his face smeared with dirt and sweat. But his eyes were steady. A Valkyrie general approached, his massive frame casting a long shadow. He looked down at Carter, then gave a slow, respectful nod. "We thought you were weak," the general rumbled. "But now we see. Your strength isn't in your bodies. It's in your will." Carter simply replied, "We're human. We don't break." The galaxy takes notice. Word of the attack, and the humans' role in repelling it, spread quickly through the Galactic Federation. Species that had once dismissed Earth now watched with new eyes. Because they realized a terrifying truth. Humans weren't the weakest species in the galaxy. They were the most dangerous. The turning point. Respect earned. The camp still smoldered. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burned metal and scorched earth. Craters pocked the training grounds, and twisted remains of alien ships littered the perimeter like broken toys. The once proud intergalactic combat training camp had been brought to its knees. But it had survived. And it had survived because of the one species no one had expected: humans. The aftermath. In the early morning light, the surviving recruits gathered in the central square, their faces pale and hollow from exhaustion. The Sindari, known for their precise strategies, looked dazed, their plans useless in the chaos of the attack. The Valkyrie, proud warriors who relied on brute strength, were battered and bruised, their size offering no protection against the invaders' advanced weapons. The Averin, swift and agile, sat quietly, their speed unable to outrun fear itself. And then there were the humans. They stood in formation, battered but unbroken, their eyes sharp and alert. Captain Ryan Carter stood at the front, his uniform torn, a gash running down his cheek. But his posture was steady. His team stood behind him: Olivia, Jake, and the others, each one marked by battle, but radiating a quiet strength that couldn't be ignored. For the first time, the aliens saw them not as fragile creatures, but as something far more dangerous: survivors. The debriefing. A new reality. Later that day, the camp's surviving commanders gathered in the damaged war room, holographic maps flickering in and out of focus. The senior officers of the Galactic Federation sat at the central table, their expressions grim. General Korath, a towering Valkyrie with deep scars across his face, broke the silence. "We underestimated them," he growled. "The humans. They saved us." Across the table, a Sindari strategist nodded slowly, his sharp eyes reflecting a mixture of respect and fear. "They didn't just save us," he said quietly. "They led us. Their tactics, their adaptability. I've never seen anything like it." The room fell silent as Captain Carter entered, his presence commanding attention. The aliens who once scoffed at his arrival now watched him with a new understanding. "You want to know why we survived?" Carter began, his voice steady but firm. "It's because humans don't know how to quit. We've faced extinction more times than we can count. We fought wars that lasted generations. We've stared into the abyss and refused to blink." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You thought we were weak because we don't have claws or fangs," he continued. "But our strength isn't in our bodies. It's in our minds, in our will. And when you threaten what we care about, you'll see just how dangerous we can be." The weight of human history. The commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard whispers of Earth's history, endless wars, brutal conflicts, and a species that seemed to thrive under pressure. But hearing it from Carter's mouth made it real. An Avarin officer, usually quick to dismiss other species, leaned forward. "How did you learn to fight like this?" he asked quietly. "Where does this resilience come from?" Olivia stepped forward, her eyes cold and unwavering. "Because we had to," she said simply. "Our history is written in blood and fire. We've fought each other, fought nature, fought the universe itself. Every generation learns from the last. We don't just survive. We adapt, we evolve, and we never stop. The room fell silent again. The aliens realized the terrifying truth. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or strength. It was their refusal to break. Recognition and fear. In the days that followed, word of the humans' actions spread throughout the Galactic Federation. Stories of their bravery, their leadership, and their unyielding spirit echoed across star systems. Species that once laughed at Earth now spoke of its people with a mix of awe and fear. At the next Federation Assembly, Earth was no longer seen as a weak newcomer. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that could lead, fight, and inspire in ways no one had expected. But with respect came something else. Fear. Because the galaxy now understood a simple, undeniable truth. Humans weren't just survivors. They were warriors. And they were just getting started. The final test. Humans lead the charge. The stars above the Galactic Federation's War Council flickered like distant embers, a reminder of the fragile calm that hung over the galaxy. But everyone in that room knew the calm wouldn't last. The invasion at the intergalactic combat training camp had only been the beginning. The unknown enemy, now identified as the Draxian Swarm, was preparing for a full-scale assault. Their ships were amassing at the galaxy's edge, and the Federation's finest strategists knew the truth. The next battle could wipe out entire civilizations. The Federation's leaders, species known for their strength, intelligence, and speed, had gathered to form a plan. But the room was tense, and no one could ignore the obvious. Their usual tactics wouldn't work, because the only reason they were still alive was standing quietly at the back of the room. The humans. An unlikely leader, Captain Ryan Carter, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his eyes scanning the holographic battle map. His face was calm, but his mind was racing. The other species had saved him a seat at the council table, but he hadn't taken it. He didn't need to. The Federation's top generals argued over battle strategies, their voices rising in frustration. The Sindari suggested complex tactical formations. The Varkari wanted a direct assault with brute force. The Avarans pushed for a hit-and-run strategy, using speed to outmaneuver the Draxians. But none of it would work. Because none of them understood what humans did. This wasn't just a battle of strength or speed. This was a battle of survival. Finally, General Korath of the Varkari slammed his fist on the table, his voice booming. "Enough," he roared. "None of this will matter if we can't agree. The Draxians will tear us apart while we sit here arguing." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Captain Carter. The human stepped forward, his boots echoing in the quiet room. He didn't shout. He didn't demand attention. But when he spoke, everyone listened. "You want to win," Carter said, his voice low and steady. "Then stop thinking like this is just another battle. This isn't about who's the strongest or the fastest. This is about who's willing to do whatever it takes." He pointed to the holographic map, where the Draxian fleet loomed like a shadow. "They're not expecting us to fight dirty. But that's exactly what we're going to do." The plan no one expected. Carter's plan was simple, but terrifying. The humans would lead a small, specialized strike team deep into Draxian territory. While the Federation's main forces created a diversion, Carter's team would infiltrate the heart of the Draxian fleet and disable their command ship. It was dangerous. It was risky. And it was exactly what the Draxians wouldn't see coming. "You're insane," a Sindari general muttered, staring at the plan in disbelief. "That's a suicide mission." Carter's lips curled into a faint smile. "Not if you know how to survive," he replied. "And trust me, we do." Preparing for the unthinkable. The days leading up to the mission were tense. While the Federation's armies prepared for a large-scale assault, the human team trained in silence. Olivia fine-tuned their weapons, ensuring every shot would count. Jake worked with Sindari tacticians to hack into the Draxian communication systems. Every human knew their role. But it wasn't just about the plan. It was about the mindset. This isn't about being the biggest or the strongest, Carter told his team the night before the mission. It's about being smarter, faster, more determined. The Draxians think we're weak. Tomorrow, we show them just how wrong they are. The infiltration. When the battle began, the galaxy trembled. The Federation's fleet engaged the Draxians head-on, their ships lighting up the darkness with brilliant flashes of energy. But while the larger armies clashed, Carter's team slipped through the chaos, navigating the shadows of the battlefield. The Draxian command ship loomed ahead, a monstrous vessel pulsing with eerie green light. The humans docked in silence, breaching the hull with precision. Inside, the ship was a maze of metal and organic growth, the walls pulsing like they were alive. The Draxians were everywhere, towering insect-like creatures with razor-sharp limbs and glowing eyes. But the humans moved like ghosts. They weren't the biggest. They weren't the strongest. But they were the most determined. They fought with precision, using the environment to their advantage. Every corner, every shadow became a weapon. They didn't fight fair. They fought to win. The heart of the enemy. As they reached the Draxian control core, alarms blared, and the ship shook violently. The Draxians realized too late what was happening. Olivia planted the explosives while Jake hacked into the ship's systems, sending a virus that would cripple the entire fleet. But the Draxians weren't going down without a fight. As the team prepared to escape, a wave of enemies closed in, their screeches echoing through the corridors. "We're not gonna make it," Jake shouted over the chaos. But Carter's eyes were calm. "Yes, we are," he said. "Because we don't quit." With one final push, the team fought their way to the extraction point, escaping just as the command ship erupted in a massive explosion. The aftermath. A galaxy changed forever. When the smoke cleared, the Draxian fleet was in ruins. The Federation had won, but not because of their armies. Because of the humans. When Carter and his team returned, the Federation welcomed them not as recruits, but as heroes. Species that once mocked humanity now stood in silent respect. But behind that respect was something else. Fear. Because the galaxy now knew humans weren't just survivors. They were the most dangerous species in the universe. And this was only the beginning. The lesson learned: never underestimate humans. The Draxian fleet was gone, reduced to drifting wreckage scattered across the cold void of space. Where once their ships had blotted out stars, only smoldering debris remained. The Galactic Federation had won the war, but no one was celebrating. Not yet. Because the galaxy had learned a lesson, and it wasn't an easy one to swallow. It wasn't the most advanced technology, the strongest armies, or the fastest ships that had turned the tide. It was the humans, the species everyone thought was weak, the species no one had feared. And now, the entire galaxy would never forget them. The aftermath of victory. In the heart of the Galactic Federation's capital, leaders from every known species gathered in a vast, glittering hall. The walls shimmered with holographic projections of stars and battlefields, a silent reminder of the price they had paid. Captain Ryan Carter and his team stood at the center of the room, surrounded by beings from every corner of the galaxy. Valkyrie generals with their towering muscular frames, Sindari strategists with their sharp, calculating eyes, Avaran commanders whose speed was legendary. But none of them commanded attention like the humans did now. General Korath of the Valkyrie stepped forward, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "When the humans arrived, we saw them as fragile," he said, his gaze locked on Carter. "We thought their bodies were weak, their technology primitive. We believed they wouldn't last a cycle in our ranks." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But we were wrong. You didn't just survive. You led us. You saved us." The Sindari strategist, once skeptical of human tactics, spoke next. "Your minds are your greatest weapon," he admitted quietly. "Where others saw chaos, you saw opportunity. Where others broke under pressure, you thrived." The Averin commander, known for his speed and agility, added a final thought. "It's not just your resilience," he said. "It's your refusal to quit. That's what makes you dangerous." A quiet response. Captain Carter listened, his face unreadable. When the room fell silent, he finally spoke. "We're not heroes," he said, his voice steady. "We're just human." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every leader present. "You all thought we were weak because we don't have claws or fangs, because we bleed easily. But what you don't understand is that we've been bleeding for thousands of years, and we've never stopped fighting." The room was silent, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. "We don't fight because we love war," Carter continued. "We fight because we have to. Because when everything's against us, when the odds are impossible, that's when we find out who we really are." A galaxy changed forever. After the meeting, word of the humans' role in the war spread across the galaxy. On distant planets and in remote star systems, species whispered the same thing. Never underestimate humans. But respect wasn't the only thing growing. There was fear, too. The same species that had mocked Earth now wondered what would happen if humans ever turned their strength against the Federation itself. Because if humans could defeat the Draxian swarm, what else were they capable of? The final twist. Weeks after the victory, Carter and his team returned to Earth. But peace was short-lived. One night, as Carter stood on a balcony overlooking the quiet city lights, Olivia approached with a secure datapad in her hand. "You need to see this," she said, her voice low. Carter glanced at the screen. His eyes narrowed. It wasn't over. The Draxian swarm had been only the beginning. Far beyond the edges of known space, something else was stirring. Something worse. And now, the galaxy wouldn't face it alone. Because this time, humanity was ready. And the universe would never be the same again.